Hello, everyone. My name is Mariana Rocha, and I am the lecturer of Rich Web Application Technologies. And I prepared this video to give you an idea about the module and the type of technologies we're going to look at so you can decide if this module is for you. So we're going to look at the fundamentals of Rich Web Application Technologies. And in this module, we try to understand how those rich web applications work and what technologies we can use to provide some rich experience to the user. So we can think about the web as this big block of technologies, and we're going to look mainly at the ones that are focusing on the client side. So those that provide an environment where the user can interact with our web pages and have a better experience while navigating around the web applications. So this module brings you to different types of technologies. We mostly use technologies that are related to JavaScript, so that they are built using JavaScript code. So in order to follow this module, it's important that you have an idea of JavaScript, although we're going to provide some resources for you to learn a bit more. This is not a JavaScript course, so it is important that you at least have an idea of how JavaScript works. You get an insight about these technologies. As I said, we're going to be covering a number of technologies, so it won't be easy for us to go deeply on each of them and become an expert, but you're going to have an idea of how they work and how you can use those. And then in the future, you can pick the ones that you're gonna get an expertise on. So some of the technologies that we look at, one of them is the asynchronous programming. This is a very relevant one, and it's something that has been used a lot lately. So basically, we work with parallel programming, which means that we can run different tasks at the same time. So just to give you a real life example, asynchronous programming can be used, for example, when you upload a picture on Instagram. It can take some time for the photo to go to the database. So while the user waits for that, this user is brought to another page. So the user doesn't have to be there waiting for the photo to be uploaded. He can actually continue to navigate on the web application. And this is quite useful because you keep the user entertained in your web application. And it's a better experience for the user. He doesn't have to wait for anything to happen. He can just keep doing other tasks while the uploading the photo is happening in the background. Another technology we look at is Node.js. And Node.js allows us to use JavaScript in the server side. Typically, Node.js is used for single page applications. So those type of applications where everything is loaded at once and the user only has to navigate around the content. The user doesn't have to wait for the server to respond in order to see more content. So Gmail and Twitter, so those pages that you see only one page with all the content being loaded at once, usually they have Node.js running in the background. We also look at React, which is a JavaScript library that is used to build user interfaces, mostly for single page applications. So it will be happening at the same time together with the asynchronous programming that we just talked about. And it handles the view layer, so the client side, what the user is seeing in the web page. And it can also be used for mobile applications, especially with React Native. And it allows us to create reusable UI components. And that's very useful when we are building maybe a complex application. So React, for example, was created and is still maintained by Facebook and is still used by Facebook. But there are many other companies. If you go to Google and see who uses React, you're going to see a long list of companies. But one of them, for example, is Discord. And they use React mostly to build their iOS mobile app. So focusing on the teaching and learning, You will attend weekly instructor-led lab sessions. So we're going to have our lecture sessions and a lab session where you're going to be working on your assignments. And you will solve some exercises and be practicing the theory. The technologies that we use are open source and free, so there's no need to worry about license or anything like that. The lectures and labs will take place according to the timetable, so keep an eye on the timetable so you know where to go for our classes and labs. Because of the pandemic, we have some government guidelines and we have to clear the room every 45 minutes for 15 minutes. We can talk a bit more about that in person, but basically we're going to have 45 minutes of lessons. And then for 15 minutes, we have to just go outside, have a cup of coffee, and then come back for another 45 minutes. Also, because of the pandemic, we know that maybe some people, for some reason, they cannot attend the class every week. So they might have some issue and they cannot attend. So we're going to have a link on Bongo for a virtual classroom. This is not for you to be using all the time. The idea is that you use it in case of an emergency. So be aware that you have a virtual classroom, but the experience won't be the same as being on campus. This module has 5 credits and it requires you a grade of at least 40% to pass. And the grade is divided in 50% of the end of term exam. So you're going to have an exam at the end of the semester. And 50% of the grade goes to the continuous assessment. So the labs that we're going to be working on during our lab sessions. All the material will be available on Brightspace. I always try to bring some extra resources for you to use if needed, besides the slides. And the continuous assessment will be based on your submission. So you're going to have around 2 to 3 weeks to solve each lab. And I'm going to be grading and giving you feedback on those labs. So it is expected that you spend around 100 hours on this module, including classes, lab sessions, and your studying at home time. You don't need to have a deep knowledge about the technologies we're going to be looking at, but it is important that you have some understanding about web development. We're going to need you to know a bit about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in order to attend this module. We'll be using Brightspace as most of the modules you're attending. I suppose they use Brightspace. You are encouraged to get involved. So ask questions, share your doubts. If you see some other, I don't know, a tutorial that you think it's useful, bring it to us, post it on Brightspace. Especially now that we are teaching in person and learning in person, it's a very good time for us to start sharing our knowledge and working together. So this is my email. So sorry, if you need anything, you can contact me or you can talk to me during the classes. This module, because we are always looking at new technologies, so the module can change a lot from one semester to the other, one year to the other. There is no reference book for you to use because mostly we are using new technologies and you have documentation online. But I will be sharing the links for those documentations with you. So just briefly going through an introduction around the module. Now that we understand how the module works and what we're going to look at, it is important that we talk a bit about what is the web and why we are calling web apps and not websites. So the web is considered the biggest application on the public internet. So as a consumer, we see it as a big portal that you just enter there and you have loads of content and you have access to many things. But as a developer, you can think about the web as a block of technologies that you have to understand each of them and see how they interact in order to provide a better experience to the user and also to build a better environment for your client. For example, if you are building an application for a company. For this module, we'll be looking at the technology point of view. So we're going to be looking at the different technologies that you can use in order to build applications for the web. So a web application can be defined as the client-server application provisioned over a network using a particular set of standard-based technologies. Okay, and we're going to talk about these technologies as we go along the module. The end user interacts with the server application through a user interface. So we're talking about the client side, and usually using a browser or a graphical rendering engine. There are many ways of developing a web application. There are many technologies in the background, and we always have to think about how to use these technologies in order to provide interaction between the client and the server side. These have evolved along the time, and more the developers are focusing on the user experience. So we kind of understand already how to develop a web application, but as the user behavior changes, also the technology has to change. Okay, so what are we talking about when we talk about a rich web application? Well, in a rich web application, the client has most, if not all, the responsibility for implementing that presentation layer logic. So it's all about the user interface and the user experience. And we're going to be developing this in the client side. So this is the latest evolution in a series of interactive design changes. And we use JavaScript a lot. And this is something that has been happening for a few years, and it didn't change much. Of course, we started to develop new frameworks, but most of them are developed based on JavaScript, using JavaScript as well. So as I already said, the web application is a client-server application. There is no hard definition, but the most important thing is that the client and the server communicate over some version of the HTTP, the protocol we already know. We talk about it in many other modules as well. So it would be assumed that the client-server message payload one by one of the standard serialization formats like the HTML, XML, JSON. So the idea is that the client-server interaction will be loading all those files that we provide when we develop our application. These are just some of the technologies that are related to web development and web application development. You're probably familiar to most of them, but I think the main thing we should talk about here, and this is something that should be very clear for you, is the difference between websites and web applications. Because at first you might say, okay, this is maybe just a web development module with some, I don't know, more advanced technologies being used. It could be, but you cannot look at rich web application as just web development. It has to be clear for you what a web application should look like. So let's try to find the difference here. There is no hard and fast rule, so there's no, way to say, okay, this is the main difference, because there are a few differences, and I don't want to give you just the answer. I want you guys to think and try to reflect and see if you can spot the differences. So the main purpose, let's start from websites. The main purpose of a website is to convey information. So do you have information there? It's kind of like a book. You have something on your screen that is sharing information to the user. So a picture gallery, for example, is a way of sharing information. And for the most part, a website content can be statically constructed. So the experience that the user has on a website can be very static. The user opens the page. If he wants to see more content, he has to click. So he will let the server knows that he's searching for more content. And he can scroll and see more things on the page, but it's very static. It's like interacting with a book. You have to open the book to start seeing the content. And if you want to see more, you have to flip the pages. So it's the same with a website. It uses HTML and CSS. Websites tend not to use JavaScript much, and when they use, it's just to slightly enhance the experience. So JavaScript on a regular website will be just bringing a few extra things, but the experience won't be very rich for the user. It's just, just a little touch to improve the website a bit. And the interaction with the server is minimal. So the only thing the user will be doing in interacting with the server is when he wants to see more content. While web applications try to be more similar to a desktop application, but you use them on a browser. And they are designed to fulfill some data processing involving the server. So let's say when you have a website, you already have your design in the background. So you have the colors you're going to use, you have a whole structure there that the user cannot modify. While if you decide to design a web app, the user maybe can choose to change the color, the user can change the font, the user can personalize the experience while using the website, the web application in this case. Just trying to see if there is anything missing. You have some examples. You guys can check the slides later if you want to see more. So the main thing I wanted to show you is these two websites. I think they show a bit better the differences between a website and a web application. They are both museums websites, so they are trying to share the same type of content, but they have some differences. So I'll just open them here. So this is for the website for an English museum. It's a normal website. It looks cute. So you have here some content. The user can just, go and see the different content. But I can, let's say, if I choose this one, I tell the server that I want to see the Masters of Japanese prints. And I can scroll down. I can see some images. I can click, read more, and I can, I don't know, see a bigger image. So I can kind of zoom in and see a bit more. Can go to the next image. But all the time, the user is a bit passive in the interaction. So he's just clicking around and looking at the content. And this would be a website. Okay, it's kind of like open a book and looking at the different contents. But this one, this is a Dutch museum. And at first, you kind of have the same experience. It looks a bit cooler. So you have, for example, when you hover the mouse here, you have some sort of animation, and you have the content, and you have things happening as you scroll down. You can already see that it's a bit of a different website. But that's not the main thing I want to show you. They have this here, play, that when I click, I can play some games. I wanted to show you, they have 3 different games. There is one that I wanted to show you. Every time you click, you see a different game. The one I wanted to show you, let me click again, is this one, Meet Your Artist. So they kind of borrowed the idea of dating apps in order to improve the interaction of the user with this website. So if I click start liking, still you see my interaction is basically just clicking, and seeing more content. But now I have a bit of a game and I have an interaction that is more personalized to me. So for example, the idea of this game is that it shows different artists and you can choose if you like it or not. So I can put left if I don't like it. So here I am already having a different experience, something more personalized, something where I can have a choice. And this is something interesting as well. Many times in a web application, the user has the choice of the content he wants to see, not only by clicking, but also by having a rich experience in the website. So let's say I like this one, but he doesn't like me. So it's a very personalized experience. Of course, that in the background, that could be random, but I feel like I am communicating with the page. But let's say now I like this one and I hope he likes me. He didn't like me as well. Let's say I like this one and he likes me. And because through this game, I had a rich experience and I felt that I was communicating more with the website. I can now also have a bit of a personalized content. So the artist I liked is presented to me. So not only by clicking, but by playing the game and having a personalized experience. You guys have access to the websites on the slide. So if you want to see more, you can take a look and try to spot maybe more differences between these websites and our web application. Okay, so we are all the time talking about maybe the visual parts, the client side, but something that can be challenging in developing web applications is the data synchronization. Because, for example, we were talking about applications, technologies that help us to develop a single page web applications. So if I want something to be single page, I want all the content to be in one page only. And that can be tricky because that is saying that the user doesn't have to communicate with the server much. So everything will be updated as the user navigates in the website. So the user doesn't have to wait. That's mostly what's happening there. But because the browser's content and data views are dynamically constructed, usually from one or more server sources, so we are not talking to only one server, we are talking to many servers, and these servers can be anywhere, the problem of data synchronization arises. So that's the challenge in web applications, and that's what most of the developers that are developing those technologies to develop web applications, that's what they are looking at many times. So later in this module, we're going to be talking about data synchronization as well, because it's a very important topic in rich web applications. So user experience, this is not a module about user experience, but all the time while we are talking about rich web, we are talking about user experience. So we are using those complex technologies to improve the user experience. Security is also an issue because mostly you are allowing the client to be always in touch with the server. So there is always that contact with the server. So data is flowing many times without the user having to do anything. So we have to be aware about possible, I don't know, attacks to that data. And it's also an issue for rich web applications. But again, there are technologies that are used in order to protect the data. So that's mostly it. I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation. I tried to be brief, just to talk a bit about the module so you guys can have an idea of how it works and maybe decide if this module is for you. Thank you.